I watched Donald Trump's speech today after the Supreme Court shut down his tariffs, so you don't have to, and this is my overview. And guys, this was the most insane speech that I have ever watched. Maybe the craziest thing he says is that he was very modest in his tariff ask of other countries, and then he says that he just wanted to be a good boy, and then he immediately goes, also the Dow just broke $50,000. Also throughout this, he will constantly say that Supreme Court judges are stupid people and idiotic, and then he will also have to confirm multiple times throughout this that he is able to read. He starts off the whole thing by just saying he's talking to a record number of people. He's in a small press briefing room. And then he says that he's ashamed of certain members of the court for not having the courage to do what's right. And then he thanks judges Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh for having strength, wisdom, and love of country. Here's a direct quote. Foreign countries who have been ripping us off for years are happy, so happy, and they're dancing in the streets, but they won't be dancing for long, I can assure you that. He says that Democrats are against anything that makes America strong, healthy, and great again. Yes, we want to destroy the country that we live in, and I'm not even a Democrat. And then he says that the justices are a disgrace. And then he says that these judges are fools and lapdogs for the rhinos, and that they're unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution. Then he just says that the opposition to him is a very small but very, very loud movement. And then he says that 2024 was just full of so much cheating, even though he won, which is a weird thing to say. And then he says that we have never done so well as a country. He says that the tariffs that he has in place have ended 5 of the 8 wars he's ended. 5 of these 8 imaginary wars that he's ended were due directly to these tariffs where you Americans were paying the US government money. That's what's ending wars. And also that tariffs reduce fentanyl coming into our country by 30% for some reason. This is the part of the speech where it will start getting just insane because he from this point forward will just claim that the court ruled in his favor because he can now charge more tariffs. He says that all the tariffs are still there regardless of the decision and that the court incorrectly rejected this, but we have alternatives and we will continue to take in hundreds of billions of dollars of your money. And then he complains that he can't charge $1 and says that it would have been 1 penny that he couldn't charge, but they got rid of the penny, so now we're saving money. Now he'll just start threatening the entire world. He's like, well, the Supreme Court says I can't do tariffs. Well, I'm allowed through my presidential power to just cut off all trade with these countries. So I'm going to take us out of the entire world market and destroy the trade just because he can. And then he says he can do an embargo and he can do anything but charge $1 in tariffs, which again is your money. And then he talks for like a couple minutes about licensing. Now, I'm not an economist. I don't know what he's actually referring to when he says licensing, but he also doesn't clarify that. And he just says, I can do licensing, but I can't charge tariffs. What is this? And this whole time while he's saying all of this, he will say things in a way as if he truly believes that the other countries are paying tariffs. I, at this point, am convinced that he honestly believes if we put a tariff on goods coming in from Canada, that Canada is sending money along with their goods to pay for it to get into our country. I honestly believe this. But he says he'll just go in another direction, and this is where he starts confirming that he's able to read. He says he read the language, and then he confirms he's very good at reading the language. You remember how Justice Kavanaugh is a rapist? Well, he says Justice Kavanaugh's stock has gone way up and he's a great man. And also Kavanaugh said that he can charge way more, so he may just do that, charge you way more. Then he'll just say that numerous other statutes allow him to charge way more money. And then he just starts listing these statutes like Act whatever of 1964, Section 3, blah, blah, directly off the piece of paper. He doesn't look up at all. He's reading all of these off of the piece of paper. And then he says, I know it so well and it's all so clear. And also Kavanaugh is a genius. Again, he can barely read. Now remember, at this point, he's just saying that the court ruled with him. So he says that they gave him more power to impose tariffs and also says that Dems just want to pack the court, which would be a good idea. And then says that maybe they should. And then he just keeps saying he will charge more in tariffs now that the Supreme Court has said that he can't do tariffs. And then he will say that the court ruled in his favor and no one was powerful enough to put in tariffs before. And also, again, we can charge more tariffs now. What are these more tariffs going to be? He says effective immediately, all existing tariffs remain fully in place. And then also on top of everything that we're already charging, we're just going to put an additional 10% global tariff on everything else that's coming into our country. And then he says, thank you for attention to this matter because everything he's read has been off of a prepared speech, but he could barely read it again. And also, who wrote that? Are you kidding me? Everything I've gone through so far, who wrote that? And then he says that people who brought the lawsuit against him are sleazebags. And then he says the court makes a lot of bad decisions, but there are ways around all of the Supreme Court decisions. The Supreme Court is the checks and balances of the legislative branch. And he's claiming that fuck their ruling. I'm just going to do what I want. I swear to God. And then he starts taking questions. Someone asked, shouldn't you just ask Congress to do this because they are the ones who should make this decision? And he says, I could ask Congress, but they would already approve it. And also I don't need to because this decision says that he can do anything that he wants with tariffs. And then he talks about the owner of the steel business that he spoke at yesterday and said again that guy wanted to kiss him twice because his workers were working more now. And then we'll talk about a bunch how under Biden they were working like 1 hour and now they're working like 3 8-hour shifts. I don't know. The rest of this is probably going to be a bunch of alsos because as he's answering questions, he just tangents together a bunch of random thoughts because he's no longer reading off a piece of paper. He says that we're building factories all over the place. Also, Canada was ripping us off and they took our market. And also he saved Intel. And then he says the country is booming. And he says it's booming because of the election and another reason. And then he forgets that he's talking and just goes, next question. And then he says he knows that these judges are slime balls and that they are influenced by foreign governments. He will get asked about that later. And he'll just say that the evidence is coming. Then a reporter starts asking a question. He just goes, I'm not talking to you. I don't talk to CNN. It's fake news. And then he goes, we will be much stronger now because every country in the world was ripping us off and we were stupid for it. And then he blames every past president, a group of which he was one. He can't read. He doesn't know he was president. He doesn't know what tariffs are. And he's making all of that very clear in this speech. He says we built China's army because he honestly thinks that when China was charging us tariffs, that we as the US government were just sending money to China. He has no idea how this works. And then also we charge them a tariff for fentanyl. And then he says he has no idea what will happen with the money that already came in from all of the Americans who paid all the tariffs. And that also this decision was written by dumb people. And then he says that we will put fair tariffs or just tariffs on other countries. If you want to know how dementia works, he says that last week we gave farmers $12 billion of the tariff money. And then he also says now tariffs are confirmed by the Supreme Court. He will say that Canada, the country, just told us that they hope that we win this decision because if not, we will be allowed to charge more tariffs against them. And then he just says that Hakeem Jeffries is a low IQ individual. And then he says he doesn't have to work with Congress. He has the right to do tariffs. And also Congress already confirmed that for him. Then he just says there is great unity within the Republican Party and he hopes you continue to vote Republican or you won't have a country anymore. Then he says, direct quote, the great big beautiful act. And then he says also that act, but that bill is better for workers and not rich people. Then he randomly starts talking about Ford. And then he says that I'll mention this. It's not relevant, but really all of it is relevant. Murders are at the lowest rate they've ever been in 125 years. Then he'll just claim that he could have shut down Switzerland and every other elite country, as he calls it, because we had a trade deficit with them. And so he was charging them tariffs. Switzerland doesn't want our shit. Switzerland builds precise Rolex watches and shit like that. What do they want from us? Someone will then ask, were you surprised by the decision of the Supreme Court? And he goes, I read the paragraphs. I can read very well. So yes, I was surprised they ruled against us because they don't know the law. He does though. He's so smart. Big boy can read very well. This is a direct quote. I swear to God. Every single thing I said today is absolute certainty. Then again, forgetting that he was president before because dementia, he says, we had some real dummies as presidents before. And then he says, in this decision, they specifically said that he can do the tariffs. Then he says we have a very fair deal with India. He says that they pay tariffs and we don't pay tariffs. So that's fair. And then he's just like, oh yeah, Modi's a great man and I have a great relationship with him. He'll just randomly claim that he's the one who put the president of Syria in office. Someone is like, do you have any advice to the people of Iran? Not the right time to ask this question, but he says they better negotiate a deal. And then he says they were going to hang people by cranes, but he told them, if you hang anyone by a crane, then we'll kill you right then and there. So they didn't hang 800 people by cranes. Then he'll just claim that the continent of Europe is completely unrecognizable. Why, you might ask? The reason he gives is the environmentalists took it over and they put up windmills everywhere. So I guess we're back to windmills now. Then he says Republican judges who voted against them are a disgrace to their families. And then he says also tariffs will potentially be higher now. And then finally he finishes off by saying great certainty has been brought back to the economy of the United States and the economy of the world. 10%ers, I warned you at the beginning, this was probably the most insane thing I've ever listened to. What was that? Can someone explain to me what what just happened here, it seems like he's continuing to not listen to the Supreme Court of the United States. He's continuing to claim that he can do whatever he wants. He's continuing to claim that he's always had the power to do even worse stuff. It's just that he was trying to be a good guy before. Remember the crazy thing I said at the beginning where he said he wanted to be a good boy? Well, this is Donald Trump being a good boy. He's going to charge you more money to bring products into this country. Love you guys.